This is the Khmer Times News. My name is Paolo Bonini, and these are your headlines. Cop killers arrested in a case that takes a very strange turn indeed. A hotelier puts a member of his staff in the grave. And the most unastonishing story ever to be seen on a newscast. We start this week with what many would consider is the most serious of crimes, and that is the murder of a police officer. It was back in August of last year. A policeman was gunned down and killed on the capital streets. And it's not until now that the court case has begun. And the reason for that is rather disturbing indeed. According to the judge, it seems some officers involved may have been suppressing this case. The headline read, "Foreign extorter kidnappers questioned in connection with death of Cambodian policeman." The incident began with a collision between two cars, which led to gunfire breaking out in the capital, leaving one person dead and another injured. Prior to the shooting, reports from the scene indicated that a white Ford Ranger, which was the gunman's car, was seen to repeatedly ram the police officer's car. This disabled the cop's car. It was then 3 gunmen got out of the Ford and opened fire on the victim's car, using what is believed to be an AK-47. Now let's pause for a moment. An AK-47 is a brutal machine. It has a firing capacity of 600 rounds per minute. This weapon is designed to do just one thing, and that thing is to kill. The cop's car was sprayed with bullets, and the 3 men inside stood no chance. The police officer, who was the driver, was hit numerous times, and he was to die on his way to hospital. It was just this week that Phnom Penh Municipal Court questioned 3 foreign criminals for this most violent of crimes. The judge that held the hearing had something very interesting to say. He charged the 3 Chinese men with premeditated murder, kidnapping, as well as possession of weapons. The 3 criminals pled guilty to those charges. But here now is the twist in the tale. The hearing was far from over, as the prosecutor requested the hearing panel to summon all relevant parties, the wife of the officer as well as his children. But he also made a special request to summon the justice police officers who participated in suppressing this case. As to what kind of suppression may have gone on has not been clarified. The hearing itself into this officer's death is now to be rescheduled, where the murky waters of this curious crime may well clear, and see yet more people being charged in the case where an officer lost his life. On this week's Crime Desk, if you thought that Basil 40 was the worst hotelier ever, you ain't seen nothing. A senior officer takes a car from a police compound, and one man runs for his life, and in doing so, he takes the life of another. Now, I want you to have a look at this guy. He is a hotel owner, and he had a spot of bother with a member of his staff. He considered this particular employee to be doing shoddy work. So what did he do? Maybe he docked him some of his wages, or maybe he gave him a written warning, putting him on notice that he better buck up his ideas. Well, no, he did neither of these things. He decided instead to beat the man to death with an iron bar. The headline read, "Chinese hotel owner charged with fatal beating of worker." Yes, a Chinese national named Yao Bangdong has been arrested after a worker of his, also Chinese, was allegedly beaten to death in the most brutal of ways. The Phnom Penh Municipal Court this week charged the man and very swiftly sent him to prison for allegedly beating his countryman to death at the Cham Kar Mon Hotel. The assault occurred at 3 p.m. and according to the deputy chief of Cham Kar Mon district, the accused had quarrelled with the 36-year-old employee over negligence of his duties. A row ensued, and it was then that the hotelier stormed off and got an iron bar. He returned and then beat his employee in the head with it repeatedly. The assault was so savage the victim died on his way to hospital. The hotel owner has confessed to the crime, and he faces a prison term of 7 to 10 years if convicted. Oh gosh, we are back in the world of drunk drivers and hit and run, but this time we have an unusual case. But first, let's have a look at the headlines that came across my desk this week. First up, there was this: driver flees after man's death in Phnom Penh. That headline was quickly followed by this: drunk foreigner arrested after Phnom Penh smash leaves man seriously injured. And I think just looking at the state of that car, we can all see how bad the accident was. But there is more, as this week saw a rash of these kind of headlines, and it's this next story we shall focus on. You know, when you get yourself in a bad situation, the best thing is to hold up your hands and say, I am to blame, and then just take your just desserts. Well, that is exactly what one driver did not do this week. And the headline says it all: driver kills man after fleeing from breathalyzer test. A Phnom Penh resident is in custody after he made the biggest mistake of his life when he killed a man late one evening. The car he was driving was signalled to pull over at a sobriety checkpoint, but the driver did not yield. He instead put his foot down and he tried to escape the police dragnet. And that is when it all went so very wrong. The driver pushed his Hyundai to the limit as police officers pursued him in a chase, but this chase was not to go on long, as almost exactly at midnight, the car, driven so recklessly, ploughed into the back of a motto. The impact was so violent, the 21-year-old motorcyclist died instantly. Another dead body picked up from the tarmac, and yet another drunk driver who now has a date with a judge. To close up our crime desk, we have a case of devious dealings and the disappearance of a car from a police compound. You see, there was a road accident. Nothing major, a drop of careless driving that saw a man having his car impounded by the police whilst they went about their investigation. And one would think at this point, what safer place could there be for a vehicle than a police impound lot? Well, not so much in this case, as the headline testified. General sold seized car to foreigner 2 months ago. Oh dear. General Trai Bun Satya, a Deputy Commissioner of Phnom Penh in charge of criminal affairs, has now been charged with a number of offences, including selling a vehicle that had been seized by the police. Traffic police officers of Priya Sihanouk province seized the white Ford Raptor F-150 on Route 100 on the 7th of March. The vehicle was impounded, but just 2 months later, it was sold off by the General. This, of course, has raised some rather serious questions, and now an investigation by senior officers has been launched. So here we are at the end of the show, and how to end? That is a question I ask myself each and every week. And earlier this week, I spotted a story I knew instantly I could not resist, as I have the mind of a 12-year-old whacked out on way too much sugar. It excited me so much, I immediately sent it to Houston, Texas, to the good old US of A, to show it to my brother Michael. So here it is, the story that went around the world. The headline read, "Wind knocks down tree in Phnom Penh." You know, I have dug my own grave here. How the hell am I going to pad this one out? I'll do my best. So, here goes. Earlier this week, a tree was blown down by the wind. The incident occurred at 4:10 p.m. on a road made of tarmac that was flanked either side by houses. The timber self-terminated about halfway up Street 222 in Sangat Bao Rang, Kang Dong Pen, Phnom Penh, postal code 2134, southern Cambodia, where the international dialing code is 855. Now that is what you call quality padding. According to sources from the scene of this timber tragedy, after a strong gust of wind blew, a large tree fell down. It landed across the road, crushing both a rickshaw and a three-wheeled motorcycle. I'm very pleased to report nobody was injured. But if they were, it would have given me more to work with here. The tree, I must remind you, due to a complete lack of copy, was blown down by the wind. But it did not remain in its resting place for long, as a small team of men arrived at the scene and chopped it up into manageable pieces, and then they carted it off. If anyone is screaming at the screen at this point saying, "Was it a slow news week, Mr. B?" I can only answer, yes, it was. It's time to have a look ahead and see what the weather has in store for us next week.
Here we are at the final chapter, and of course it is the weather as usual. But as always, I like to show you something from my week, and we slide it across the jolly old weather. And what do we see? We see a man standing in front of a small wooden table in the middle of nowhere, selling lumps of a dead animal. And I was cycling around, I cycle like a madman, and I bumped into this guy, and he was very pleasant. And you can see in the right-hand corner, just over his shoulder, his little tin hut he lives in. And he stands by this dirt road, and I do mean it when I say in the middle of nowhere, and he sells lumps of dead animal. So there he is, you see, doing his job. Well done, him. So now it's time to get to the weather. Oh, dear, I'm having trouble again. Right, where's the... the trouble I have getting up, it's just ridiculous. And, hold on. Oh, yeah, there you go. I've got it up. And what do we see? Oh, lordy looks. We have rain across the board here, but it is localised. Looking towards the end of the week, it does look like it's going to abate some. The high temperature as I scan across is 94 degrees, and the humidity, not surprisingly, is standing at the solid 100%.
This has been the Khmer Times News. Please do subscribe and comment and stay up to date with all the breaking news by following us on both Facebook and Telegram. This has been Paolo Bonini, and that was the week that was. I'll see you next weekend for your weekly Roundup.